A shy intern greeted a deaf visitor in sign language, unaware the CEO was watching from behind. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to the main character. Her name is Lila Monroe, and on that quiet Monday morning, she stands just inside the glass doors of a downtown office tower, clutching a slim notepad the way people do when they are trying to make themselves smaller. The lobby smells faintly of polished marble and fresh coffee, the kind of place where footsteps echo a little too loudly if you walk without confidence. Lila is an intern, barely 3 weeks in, still learning which elevator goes where and which people expect eye contact and which do not. Her badge hangs a little crooked, and she keeps straightening it, a nervous habit she picked up on her first day. She tells herself to focus, to breathe, to remember that this is just another morning. Across the lobby, a middle-aged man pauses near the reception desk, his shoulders tense, his eyes scanning the room with a quiet uncertainty that most people are too busy to notice. The receptionist speaks, then repeats herself, her smile thinning as the man does not respond. A few seconds stretch longer than they should. Lila notices the way his hands move, the slight tilt of his head, the familiar sign she learned years ago at her kitchen table, practicing with someone she loved. Before she has time to second-guess herself, before fear can catch up, Lila steps forward. She lifts her hands gently, her movements calm and respectful, and signs a simple greeting. Good morning. How can I help you? The man's face changes instantly, surprise giving way to relief, his shoulders dropping as if he has been holding his breath for far too long. Around them, the lobby noise fades into the background, replaced by a small pocket of understanding that feels almost private. Lila feels her heart race, aware that she is probably breaking some unspoken rule, that interns are not supposed to intervene. But she keeps going, translating questions, pointing toward the elevators, offering reassurance with every careful gesture. She does not see the tall man who has stopped a few steps behind her, does not notice the way he folds his arms and watches, not with impatience, but with a thoughtful stillness. She does not know that he is the CEO of the entire company, that he has spent years testing systems and strategies, yet has rarely seen something as quietly powerful as this. To Lila, this is not a performance, not a bid for attention. It is simply the right thing to do in a moment that asked for it. When the visitor smiles and signs thank you, truly thank you, Lila smiles back, shy but genuine, unaware that in choosing kindness without an audience, she has just stepped into a story much larger than her internship, a story that begins right here, in a lobby where someone important was watching from behind. Lila does not realize how quiet the lobby becomes after the visitor leaves, how the normal rhythm returns in pieces, phones ringing, heels clicking, security gates humming softly again. She steps back toward her small workstation, heart still beating faster than usual, fingers slightly tense as if they remember every movement she just made. For a moment, she worries she has crossed a line. Interns are told on their first day to observe, not to intervene, to learn by watching, not by acting. She replays the moment in her head, the receptionist's tight smile, the way a supervisor glanced over with mild irritation, the unspoken rule that helping too much can sometimes be seen as overstepping. Lila straightens the stack of papers in front of her even though they are already neat, a nervous reflex she cannot seem to break. She reminds herself why she is here. This internship matters. It pays just enough to help with rent in her small apartment 15 minutes away by bus. It is a chance to prove she belongs in a corporate world that still feels intimidating and loud. She did not come from connections or privilege. She came from long nights studying, from commuting with a backpack that always feels a little too heavy, from telling herself that if she stays quiet and works hard, someone might eventually notice. Around her, conversations drift by. Someone jokes about coffee. Someone complains about a late meeting. No one mentions what just happened, and that almost makes it worse. Lila wonders if she will be called into an office later, if someone will remind her gently but firmly that she is here to assist, not to lead. She tries to focus on the tasks she knows well, logging visitor names, checking badges, answering emails that feel safer because they do not require her voice. Across the room, Julian Hart has not moved. He watches Lila return to her desk, notices the way she avoids attention, the way she does not look around to see who might be watching. He has spent years walking through offices like this, invisible in plain sight when he wants to be, learning more from quiet observation than from reports or surveys. He has seen employees perform kindness when cameras are on and supervisors are nearby. This feels different. This feels uncalculated. He notices the intern's worn notebook tucked beside her keyboard, the careful way she double-checks each entry. He notices that no one thanks her, that no one even asks her name. A few minutes later, a supervisor murmurs something about interns needing to stay in their lane. Lila nods, cheeks warming, whispering a soft apology even though she is not sure what she did wrong. She does not argue. She never does. Inside, though, there is a familiar ache, the kind that comes from knowing you did the right thing and still feeling small afterward. Julian turns away before anyone notices him standing there too long. He makes a mental note of the name on her badge, Lila Monroe, the letters slightly faded at the edges. As he walks toward the elevators, he thinks about systems, about values printed on glossy posters that say inclusion and respect, and how easily those words fade when no one important is watching. He thinks about how leadership is measured, not by speeches, but by moments like this. Back at her desk, Lila exhales slowly and returns to her screen, unaware that her quiet choice has already shifted something behind the scenes. To her, this is just another day she hopes will pass without trouble. She has no idea that someone saw her, not as an intern, not as background noise, but as the kind of person companies claim they want to be built around. Lila's day continues in small, careful motions, the kind that leave no trace. She refills the printer paper, answers a few emails, and updates a visitor log that no one will review closely. Every so often, her hands pause over the keyboard, and her thoughts drift back to the man in the lobby, to the way his expression softened when he realized he was understood. That memory steadies her more than she expects. It reminds her why she learned sign language in the first place, long before internships or office towers mattered. Back then, it was evenings at a worn kitchen table, her aunt across from her, laughing gently as Lila mixed up signs, patient and encouraging. Communication, she learned early, was not about sounding important. It was about making someone feel less alone. By late morning, the lobby grows busier. A delivery arrives. A group of executives passes through, talking numbers and deadlines. Lila keeps her head down, aware of how easy it is to disappear in a place like this. She overhears two employees whispering nearby, wondering aloud why an intern was dealing with visitors earlier. Their tone is not cruel, just dismissive, and that somehow stings more. Lila tells herself not to take it personally. She reminds herself that this is temporary, that internships are about endurance as much as skill. Meanwhile, on the upper floors, Julian Hart sits in a glass-walled conference room. Half listening to a presentation he has heard variations of many times before. His mind keeps returning to the lobby, to the small, unscheduled moment that revealed more about his company than any polished slide ever could. He asks a few pointed questions, his calm voice making the room fall quiet, not because he raises it, but because people are used to listening when he speaks. After the meeting ends, he lingers, looking out over the city, the grid of streets far below dotted with yellow taxis and lunchtime crowds. He thinks about the word culture, how often it is used, how rarely it is tested. Around noon, Lila steps outside with a packed lunch, a simple sandwich and an apple she brought from home. She sits on a low bench near the building entrance, shoulders hunched slightly against the breeze. The city hums around her, and for a few minutes, she allows herself to relax. She practices signs in her head, small movements of her fingers hidden in her lap, running through phrases she might never need, but likes to keep sharp anyway. She does not notice Julian exit the building a short distance away, speaking quietly into his phone, his tone thoughtful rather than urgent. He ends the call and glances toward the bench, recognizing her immediately. He watches without approaching, noticing how she eats slowly, how she seems content with little. There is no performance here, no attempt to impress. It confirms what he suspected. When Lila returns inside, She is asked to help with a simple task upstairs, delivering documents to a department she has not visited before. The elevator ride feels longer than usual, her nerves fluttering again as she steps into a quieter, more polished hallway. She does her job quickly and politely, earning a brief nod of thanks that feels like a small victory. Back at her desk, as the afternoon light shifts through the lobby windows, Lila senses that something has changed, though she cannot name it. A supervisor passes by and actually smiles, telling her to be ready for a possible meeting later in the week. No explanation is given. Lila nods, heart skipping, unsure whether to be excited or afraid. She has no way of knowing that the quiet test she passed without realizing it is still unfolding, or that the person who watched her that morning is already deciding what happens next. The following morning arrives with a light rain that turns the city sidewalks slick and reflective, and Lila arrives 10 minutes early, as she always does, shaking water from her umbrella before stepping into the building. She feels a quiet tension in her chest, the kind that comes from being told to expect something without knowing what it is. The lobby looks the same, polished and orderly, yet to her it feels different now, charged with possibility. She checks her email and finds a brief message waiting, asking her to attend a meeting in the afternoon. No agenda listed, no explanation. Her fingers hover over the keyboard as she rereads it. Then she closes her inbox and exhales slowly. All morning, she moves through her tasks with extra care, determined not to give anyone a reason to question her place here. She keeps her voice low, her movements efficient, blending into the background the way she always has. Across the building, Julian Hart reviews internal reports with a new lens. He asks for data that is rarely requested, notes about accessibility, about client experiences that fall outside the usual metrics. A few managers shift uncomfortably and use to this line of questioning. Julian listens more than he speaks, absorbing the subtle defensiveness, the casual assumptions that certain accommodations are optional rather than essential. His thoughts return, again and again, to the intern in the lobby, to the way she did not hesitate when no one was prompting her to act. Around noon, the same deaf visitor returns, this time accompanied by a colleague. The receptionist looks momentarily uncertain, then glances toward Lila's desk. There is a pause, an unspoken question. Lila meets her eyes, searching for permission. The receptionist shrugs slightly, as if to say, "Go ahead." Lila steps forward once more, hands steady, greeting the visitor again with a warm familiarity that feels earned. The visitor's face lights up, and the exchange unfolds smoothly, effortlessly. Several employees notice this time. A few watch with curiosity. One watches with something like embarrassment. From a short distance away, Julian observes again, noting the difference between the room yesterday and today. The act is the same, but the audience has changed, and so has the reaction. Lila finishes helping and returns to her desk, cheeks warm but posture calm. She does not seek approval. She simply resumes her work. When the afternoon meeting finally arrives, Lila is escorted to a conference room she has only ever passed by. The walls are glass, the table long and immaculate. She takes a seat at the far end, folding her hands in her lap to keep them from trembling. One by one, people enter, managers she recognizes only by reputation. Then the last person walks in, tall, composed, his presence quiet but commanding. Lila's breath catches when she recognizes him as the man from the lobby, the observer she never noticed, the one whose name she has seen in company emails but never expected to meet. Julian Hart takes a seat and looks around the table before his gaze settles on her. There is no smile, no frown, just attentive focus. He asks a few questions about the morning, about visitor flow, about communication barriers. Lila answers carefully, honestly, her voice soft but clear. She talks about sign language, about how small efforts can make a difference, about how easy it is to overlook people when systems are built without them in mind. The room is silent when she finishes. Julian nods slowly, as if confirming something to himself. Lila has no idea whether she has said too much or too little. She only knows that she spoke from a place that feels true. As the meeting ends, she stands, ready to leave quietly, when Julian thanks her by name, his voice calm, deliberate. It is the first time someone that powerful has said her name aloud, and it lands with more weight than any praise. Lila walks back to her desk in a daze, unaware that this conversation is only the beginning, and that the test she never knew she was taking has just reached its turning point. The days that follow move with a different rhythm for Lila, subtle but undeniable, like the air shifting before a change in weather. She notices it in small ways at first, in how people pause a moment longer when she speaks, in how her suggestions are no longer brushed aside without thought. She keeps her head down, unsure how to hold this new attention, afraid that if she acknowledges it too openly, it might disappear. She continues to arrive early, continues to work through lunch when needed, continues to help quietly when she sees a need. One afternoon, she is asked to assist with a special visitor orientation, something usually handled by a senior coordinator. The request surprises her, but she agrees without hesitation, preparing notes the night before in her small apartment, practicing signs in the mirror as if rehearsing for something important. When the day arrives, the orientation goes smoothly, the visitors engaged, appreciative, and at the end, one of them thanks her with a sincerity that lingers long after they leave. Lila feels that familiar warmth again, the reminder that she is exactly where she is supposed to be in moments like this. Across the building, Julian Hart continues to watch, though now his attention is more deliberate. He reads feedback forms that mention clarity, respect, and inclusion, words that appear more frequently than before. He notices patterns, how small changes ripple outward, affecting morale in ways no policy memo ever could. He schedules a follow-up meeting, smaller this time, focused, inviting Lila along with a few department leads. When she receives the invitation, her hands shake so badly she has to set her phone down. She tells herself to stay calm, to treat this like any other task, but her heart knows better. In the meeting, Julian asks Lila to share her experiences directly. She hesitates, then speaks honestly, about how it feels to navigate a space not designed with everyone in mind, about how simple awareness can change everything. She does not accuse. She does not demand. She simply explains. The room listens. Some shift uncomfortably. Others nod slowly. Julian watches the dynamic unfold, impressed not by confidence alone, but by restraint, by the way Lila holds her ground without needing to dominate the room. Afterward, he asks her to stay back for a moment. The others file out, leaving the glass room quiet, the city stretching beyond the windows. Julian thanks her again, this time more personally, telling her that what she did in the lobby set something in motion. Lila listens, unsure where to look, her hands folded tightly in front of her. He asks her about her background, about why she learned sign language, about what she hopes to do after the internship ends. No one has ever asked her those questions here. She answers carefully, truthfully, admitting she does not have everything planned, that she just wants to do work that matters. Julian considers this, then tells her he is creating a new role, one focused on accessibility and client experience, and that he would like her to help shape it. The words feel unreal, heavy in the air between them. Lila blinks, certain she has misunderstood. He repeats himself, calmly, offering her a chance not just to stay, but to grow. She feels a rush of emotion she struggles to contain, a mix of gratitude and disbelief. She manages to thank him, her voice steady despite everything she feels inside. As she leaves the room, her steps feel lighter, as if the building itself has shifted beneath her feet. Julian watches her go, reflecting on how leadership sometimes means recognizing value where others see none. Lila returns to her desk, sits down, and for a moment simply breathes. She knows the path ahead will not be easy, that new expectations bring new challenges, but she also knows this opportunity was born from being herself when no one asked her to be. And somewhere deep inside, she senses that this story, which began with a simple greeting, is still unfolding. The new role does not come with fanfare, only a quiet shift in expectations that Lila feels the moment she begins. Her desk moves closer to the main floor, not as a promotion on display, but as a practical choice, a signal that her presence matters where people enter and exit. She spends her first week listening more than speaking, observing how visitors navigate the space, where confusion forms, where frustration shows up in subtle ways. She takes notes in the same worn notebook, filling pages with small ideas, simple adjustments, ways to make communication clearer without drawing attention to difference. Julian checks in occasionally, never hovering, never pressuring, asking questions that show he is actually listening to the answers. Their conversations remain professional, but there is an ease that grows between them, a mutual respect grounded in action rather than titles. Lila still feels the weight of doubt some days. She overhears whispers about favoritism, about how opportunities rarely come from nowhere. She reminds herself that she did not ask for this role, that it grew from something she did instinctively, not strategically. On days when the doubt is louder, she focuses on the work, on the way a visitor smiles when they feel understood, on the relief that crosses a face when barriers quietly fall away. One afternoon, Julian invites her to walk through the building with him, not as a tour, but as a shared exercise. They move through hallways and common areas, stopping to observe, to imagine the space through different eyes. Julian asks thoughtful questions, and Lila answers honestly, sometimes unsure, sometimes confident, always careful not to overstep. She notices how he listens without interrupting, how he considers each suggestion, weighing impact over convenience. In those moments, she forgets he is a CEO and sees instead someone genuinely curious, someone willing to learn. As weeks pass, the changes begin to show. Feedback improves. Employees start asking Lila for guidance rather than questioning her presence. She handles these moments with humility, remembering how easily power can shift. Julian watches the culture evolve in ways he cannot fully measure, but he feels it, in the energy of meetings, in the tone of emails, in the way people speak when they think no one important is listening. One evening, as the building empties and the city lights flicker on outside, Lila stays late to finish a report. Julian passes by, surprised to see her still there. He thanks her for the work she has done, not as a formality, but as an acknowledgement. Lila shrugs lightly, saying she is just doing what feels right. Julian smiles at that, a small, genuine smile that lingers longer than expected. There is no crossing of lines, no sudden shift into something unspoken, only a growing awareness of shared values, of a connection built on mutual respect. As Lila packs up to leave, she pauses by the lobby, the place where everything began. She watches a new intern greet a visitor confidently, using techniques Lila helped introduce. It fills her with a quiet pride. She steps outside into the evening air, feeling both grounded and changed. Julian watches from the window above, reflecting on how leadership sometimes means stepping back and letting others lead. Neither of them names what is forming, the trust, the admiration, the sense of alignment that goes beyond roles. They do not need to. For now, it is enough to know that something meaningful is taking shape, something rooted not in status or power, but in the simple choice to see and be seen. And as the city hums around them, both sense that this story, shaped by kindness and quiet courage, is moving toward a moment neither can yet predict. The tension does not arrive loudly, but it spreads the way unease always does, through sideways glances and conversations that stop when someone enters the room. Lila feels it before she understands it, a subtle cooling where there was once quiet acceptance. A proposal she submits is returned with more questions than usual. A meeting she is normally included in happens without her. She tells herself not to overthink it, but the old instincts return, the ones that learned long ago how quickly a sense of belonging can be taken away. Word travels, softly but persistently, that some senior staff are unhappy with the changes, that accessibility initiatives are slowing things down, that one intern has somehow gained too much influence too quickly. Lila overhears her name paired with phrases like special treatment and favoritism, and even though no one says it to her directly, it weighs on her all the same. She begins to second-guess herself, to wonder if she has asked for too much without meaning to. Julian senses the shift as well. He hears it in meetings where progress is questioned with thinly veiled resistance, in emails that suddenly emphasize efficiency over inclusion. A few board members request a review, framing their concerns as strategic, but the undertone is clear. They are uncomfortable with change that does not benefit them directly. Julian listens carefully, letting them speak, noting how easily values are compromised when they require effort. He does not defend Lila immediately. Instead, he asks for evidence, for specifics, for concrete examples of harm. None are given, only vague discomfort. Meanwhile, Lila is asked to present her work to a broader group, a request that feels less like an opportunity and more like a test. She prepares carefully, staying late to refine her points, determined to be clear and respectful. On the day of the presentation, she stands in the same glass conference room where everything shifted weeks ago. The room feels colder now, the attention sharper. She speaks about outcomes, about feedback, about small changes that led to measurable improvements. She does not appeal to emotion. She does not mention herself. She focuses on the work. When she finishes, the silence stretches longer than before. Questions follow, pointed and skeptical. Lila answers each one calmly, even as her hands tremble slightly. She knows she is being evaluated not just on her ideas, but on whether she belongs in this space at all. Julian watches closely, aware that this moment will define more than a project. When the discussion turns dismissive, when someone suggests that perhaps this role was an experiment that has run its course, Julian finally speaks. His voice is calm, but there is a firmness beneath it that commands attention. In a difficult position because of her, that she has become a liability rather than an asset. Later that evening, Julian finds her gathering her things, her expression thoughtful, almost resigned. She tells him she understands if he needs to step back, if this has gone too far. Julian looks at her steadily and tells her that leadership means standing by decisions made for the right reasons, especially when they are challenged. He assures her that she has earned her place, not through connection, but through integrity. Lila feels a rush of emotion she struggles to contain, relief mixed with a deeper realization. This was never just about her role. It was about whether kindness and inclusion would be treated as optional or essential. As she leaves the building that night, the city lights reflecting off the pavement, Lila knows that whatever happens next, she has crossed a line she will never return from. The quiet intern who once hoped to go unnoticed has been seen, tested, and defended, and the story they are part of has reached a turning point that will demand courage from them both. The days after the confrontation feel strangely calm, as if the storm has passed and left the air clearer than before. Lila returns to her work with a steadiness she did not know she possessed, no longer shrinking from attention, but not seeking it either. She focuses on implementation now, on turning ideas into systems that last beyond her presence. She collaborates with teams that once resisted her, finding common ground through patience rather than pressure. Slowly, attitudes shift. What was once viewed as an inconvenience becomes a standard, woven into processes so seamlessly that people forget it was ever optional. Julian watches this transformation with a quiet satisfaction. He does not announce victories or take credit. Instead, he approves resources, clears obstacles, and lets the work speak for itself. One afternoon, he asks Lila to join him for a final review, not in a conference room, but in the lobby where it all began. The space looks different now. Clear signage, improved flow, subtle design changes that invite rather than intimidate. Visitors move with more confidence. Conversations unfold with less friction. Lila walks beside Julian, pointing out details, explaining decisions she once would have been too hesitant to voice. Julian listens, nodding, asking questions that show he sees the bigger picture. When they finish, he turns to her and thanks her, not just for the work, but for staying true to herself when it would have been easier to step back. He tells her that the company is formally creating a permanent department around accessibility and experience, and that he wants her to lead it. The offer lands softly but carries immense weight. Lila feels the familiar disbelief rise again, followed by something steadier, a quiet confidence earned rather than given. She accepts, her voice calm, her eyes bright with purpose. Later that evening, the building hosts a small internal gathering, a chance to acknowledge progress without spectacle. Employees mingle, conversations relaxed, the atmosphere warmer than Lila remembers it ever being. Julian stands beside her at one point, no longer just an observer, but a partner in the change they set in motion together. There is an ease between them now, a shared understanding that does not need words. As the evening winds down, Julian asks if she would like to walk outside for a moment. The city hums around them, lights reflecting off the glass towers, the air cool and refreshing. They talk quietly, about paths not taken, about the unexpected ways life unfolds when values align. Julian admits that watching her in the lobby forced him to confront his own assumptions, to remember why he built the company in the first place. Lila listens, moved by his honesty, realizing that leadership can be transformed as much as it can transform others. There is no rush, no grand declaration, only a sense of possibility grounded in mutual respect. When they part ways for the night, Lila heads home with a lightness she has never felt before. She thinks about the intern she once was, hoping not to be noticed, and the leader she is becoming by choosing visibility with purpose. Julian returns to his office, looking out over the city, aware that the most meaningful decisions are often sparked by moments that seem small at the time. Neither knows exactly where this connection will lead, but both understand that it is rooted in something real, something earned. As the lobby lights dim and the city settles into its evening rhythm, the choice they have made becomes clear. They chose integrity over convenience, courage over comfort, and in doing so, they opened the door to a future shaped not by status or power, but by the quiet strength of being fully seen. The following weeks settle into a rhythm that feels both new and familiar, like a song Lila has always known but never expected to sing out loud. Her department takes shape quietly, staffed by people who believe in the work not because they were told to, but because they saw its impact firsthand. Visitors move through the building with ease. Conversations flow without awkward pauses, and the small notebook Lila once clutched like a shield now rests open on her desk, filled with plans instead of doubts. Julian continues to lead with the same calm steadiness, but there is a softness to him now, a warmth that others notice even if they cannot name it. He invites Lila into conversations not as a formality, but as a collaborator, and she speaks with a confidence grounded in purpose rather than pride. One evening, after a long day of meetings and milestones, Julian asks Lila to meet him in the lobby after hours. The building is quiet, lights dimmed, the city outside glowing through the glass. They stand where they once passed each other unnoticed, and for a moment, neither speaks. Julian breaks the silence by telling her that the most important moment of his career did not happen in a boardroom or at a launch event, but right here, when he watched someone choose kindness without knowing it would be rewarded. Lila listens, her heart steady, understanding that this is not about praise, but about recognition. She tells him that she never imagined her life unfolding this way, that she only acted because it felt right. Julian smiles, saying that doing the right thing when no one is watching is exactly what leadership should look like. He asks her to walk with him outside, and they step into the cool night air, the city stretching endlessly around them. They talk about the future, about building spaces where people feel seen, about balance, about learning from each other. The connection between them feels natural, unforced, rooted in shared values rather than circumstance. There is no rush, no pressure, only an understanding that what they have built together matters deeply to them both. As time passes, their partnership grows into something more, something steady and sincere, shaped by trust and mutual respect. It is not a story of rescue or transformation from above, but of two people meeting as equals, each changed by the other in quiet ways. Months later, at a company event celebrating a year of progress, Lila stands beside Julian, watching a new intern confidently greet a visitor in sign language. She feels a familiar warmth, a full-circle moment that brings everything into focus. Julian reaches for her hand, a simple gesture, public yet gentle, and she squeezes back, smiling. In that moment, Lila understands that her journey was never about being noticed for the sake of recognition, but about creating space for others to be understood. Julian understands that true leadership is not measured by authority, but by the courage to listen and act. As the evening draws to a close and the city lights shimmer beyond the glass, their story settles into something enduring. It is a reminder that the smallest choices can open the largest doors, that kindness seen by no one can still change everything, and that when people lead with integrity and compassion, they build more than careers or companies. They build futures rooted in respect, connection, and the quiet power of being fully present. And in that stillness, surrounded by a city that never truly sleeps, Lila and Julian know that the story that began with a simple greeting has found its meaning, not in status or success, but in the shared commitment to see and be seen.